is very biased, right? What we're learning here,
it's all an illusion. No one is working, no one is doing the job that is expected for. Like, to keep the economy of the US running, well, that's debatable.
is it though? Like, is education in the US, education in Europe?
If there is a degree is legitimate, yes.
So everyone's dream as a young child, especially as an African child, was to study abroad, right? If anyone you grew up with went to study in the US, like that was the goal, right? Why? Because we thought it was better. We thought it was better to, go to the West, absorb the Western culture, come back speaking differently. But is it though? Like, is education in the US, education in Europe better? Well, I did my master's in Europe. I did my undergrad in South Africa. So I was able to compare and look at the differences. And the truth is, it really isn't. Like, it really isn't. It's all a hype. And I want to talk about it today in this video, right? I want to talk about what I've observed to be different, what I've observed to be better. So the first thing I want to talk about is obviously the infrastructure, right? Does it look better? Because we always doubt ourselves because of the inferiority complex. We always think, oh no, Africa looks whatever, Europe always looks better. But does it look better? Does it look better? That's infrastructure. I'm going to follow with the content that we learn in these institutions. Is it different? Which one is better? And then I'll also go into the resources. And then I'll close with the testing and the grading system, right? So my name is Snetemba, and welcome to my channel, Let's Get Uncomfortable, where I discuss various topics, sometimes topics that are uncomfortable. And as a disclaimer, this was a school in a small town. Like, I went to a school in a small town. It wasn't an Ivy League. And also it was my personal experience. So if you meet someone or watch someone's video and they accounted it differently, that's fine too, because people are different, right? And we all have different experiences. Now, let's talk about the infrastructure. This will obviously depend on what you like. If you're into old buildings, the European style, you probably will like European buildings. I'm not into that, right? I really wasn't into it. And because in Africa, we're more futuristic, we're looking forward, we want to be innovative. Whereas in the Europe, they really don't care much about the buildings that look like Dubai buildings. So they didn't put much effort into the buildings. Were very old. There was always construction going on. So it honestly wasn't even pretty. And what I've also realized is because there aren't many, workers who work in like cleaning services, it was always like, with leaves and dirty. Whereas in African countries, there are a lot of people who work in like the cleaning industries. You always have the cleaning lady, so it always looked pretty stunning. So I thought it was better, right? And then now let's talk about the main thing, which is the content. The content is not different in a sense. Like, we all, if you're doing mathematics, it's always going to be Gaussian elimination. It's always going, we all learn the same mathematics. But when it comes to what I was studying, which is economics, it was a bit different in that because all of these models are built in the West, right? For example, if you want a growth model, it's going to be built in the West. If you want this model, it's going to be built based on what happened in the West. And then we adopt those textbooks, we adopt them, and we study them in South Africa. So what I realize is because they don't really align with us, we don't really see those things happening in real life. For example, you'll see a model and they say, oh no, we assume that unemployment rate is 5%. In South Africa, we've never seen an unemployment rate of 5%, but that's how the model is. So I feel like then because of that, our lecturers or teachers wouldn't really dwell much on the theoretical part. They sort of teach how to apply this in the real world, right? Now that you have this model, how do you apply it in the real world? Whereas, because in the West they're very attached to these models, they love these models so much, it's near and dear to them. They sort of align with them very much. They they sort of align with them very much. So they focus on the theoretical part. Where does it come from? Which was very interesting because I'm like, all of us, especially like African students, are like, just tell me how I apply this in the real world. The questions was, just tell me how I can apply this into the world. And they're like, that's not important. What is important is the theoretical part. Now, you can argue that it's better to know that. I don't think it is because it doesn't help in the real world. So I find that to be interesting, and I really wasn't sure if it was, you know, I needed to know the history of these models, right? And the second one on the content still is bias, which was something that me and other African students, complain about a lot, which is like this is very biased, right? What we're learning here has nothing to do with the rest of the world. It has to do only with Europe. Is there space for, African context to be applied to these models? Is there space for African, experiences to be applied to these models? Or are we just gonna like ignore the fact that other countries exist, other countries that are extremely poor exist, other countries that don't align with these things exist? Or are we just gonna continue learning about whatever is happening in Europe, which I don't care about, right? So I found it to be very, very biased. And then on still the content, the other part is the resources, right? I didn't find that they had better resources or we didn't have better resources. It was just the same. Like, honestly, there's not much of a difference when it comes to the resources that we have as African students. Also, I will caveat this with I went to just one university, so there's probably someone who experienced something different and they were like, no, Mina, my university did not have any resources and whatever infrastructure was not as good as the one that you went to. So you can always comment. But to me, that sort of dream of, oh no, I'm going to go to the West and I'm going to find this futuristic building with um, high level, resources, it was shattered because it really wasn't. It was just a normal building. And the one that I had in my African country was even better, right? So, and then now, this one, honestly, I had serious issues with, which is the grading system. The grading system there is just insane. So I'll just start by explaining what it looks like. So everyone in South Africa and Africa will know that we grade out of 100%, right? So you have 100%, and they'll tell you that, oh, your assessment will count for 60, and then your final exam will count for 40%, right? There they have points. It's like 20 points. Everything, your exam is 18 points, and then everything else is like 2 points. And I agree, listen, maybe if I had started there from first year, I would have gotten used to it, but I didn't understand it. And like we that's what we understand things in percentages as well. Like in real life, no one ever talks about points. Oh no, we increase by what points. We all talk about percentages. So I found that to be really interesting, and it didn't make sense to me. Why should this one exam determine whether or not I do well, right? Fine. And then another thing is like the cumulative assessment. There's also this idea that participation plays a big role in like the West. And this is not only in like Europe, because I also read a book where this other author was talking about they went to a university in the US. I think it was like Princeton, or yeah, I think it was Princeton. And they also have this thing called class participation. So you get like 50% of your grade sometimes will count from whether or not you participate. And I found that to be interesting because it isn't that dependent on whether or not you are an extrovert. Like, what happens to people who do not, are not comfortable speaking around people, or who do not speak English as their first language, or then what happens? I found that to be interesting in that me coming to class and engaging with the lecturer is going to count a large proportion of my grade. So that also found it to be interesting, and also it's very, like I said, the bias will then come in here because how do you know that I've participated enough for you to give me like a good grade? How do you know that I've shown up enough for you to? Because in my head, I did the most, even though I spoke 3 words. To me, if I'm an introvert, that meant a lot, right? And then the other part of the assessment was the oral exams. I don't know if anyone has ever had an oral exam, but I found it to be interesting as well that so much of my grade is dependent on this oral exam, and it's not even like of like I remember the lecturer just asked me one question, and or like one or two questions, and we spoke a little bit about the project, and I'm like, this is not enough. I feel like in South Africa and Africa, maybe because we feel like we need to make our education at a high level, we put so much emphasis on the grading, we put so much emphasis on is high quality. I need to make this exam as hard as possible. Even if maybe you do have an oral exam, you're going to have like a panel and it's going to be many questions asked. there it was just like sort of like it was sort of vibes. And I don't know if I got much from the grading. You know what I mean? Um, did I learn something from it? Yeah, of course, but I feel like they could have done something different or could have done something better, right? And I want to say in concluding this video, right, this whole idea of oh no, studying abroad is better. I don't think it's founded on any actual research or any actual like experience that the Western education is better. I think it's because of just what we think of Africa as a country. We think of it as being inferior to the West. We think of it as being inferior to Europe, being inferior to the US. But our education, in my opinion, is superior to theirs because our lecturers take like this the job caveat. I'm not saying they didn't take the job seriously, but I was saying it is sort of like it was intense. It was a lot of content. You were tested continuously, whereas it was just like in the West, it was just like, oh, do you show up? Did I like you? Did we talk about this? And it was just like passing. And so many of our students, or so many of African students, would look at these kids who went to these Ivy Leagues or into the universities in the West, and they think, oh, they must be better than me, or they must have learned, they must have gotten a better education than I did. And the truth is, it really isn't. If I'd stayed in South Africa, I probably would have gotten way more than what I got when I went to the West, right? And also, I want to talk about the English language in conclusion, because I think as African and South Africans, we sort of, our intelligence, or the way we articulate ourselves, or the way we think, is dependent on whether we can speak good English. Whereas where I went in Belgium, no one speaks English, and the lecturers didn't care. In fact, sometimes they'd be like, no, speak French. It's okay for you to speak French. I'll still grade you in French. And I'm like, I've spent 12 years of my life trying to understand this language that I thought would help me when I go to Europe, when I go to the US, because it's exactly what makes me more intelligent and more articulate. I'm not saying that speaking English is not a good thing, but I'm just saying it shouldn't measure your intelligence, because the people we think we're measuring this intelligence against don't even care about it as much, right? We feel so, even no man cutting figure, ne? I guess Mina, for me it was different, because I was like, no, I was so, you get in, you want insecurity, and then when you're insecure, you want to overperform, you want to overdo it. So even when I go to class, like, I was very prepared, and now figure the other kids are just like, eh. And like, do you know how many African students have thought about coming to the West, and to them this would be like life changing? This is like the pinnacle of like education. You know what I mean? And I'm like, it's not. It's not even close. Our GDP is not growing at all in South Africa. It really isn't. It's like close to 1%, right? So when you talk about, and in the West, they will tell you, even on my research, I'm actually exploring this, which they say there are a lot of jobs, but there aren't people to take these jobs, right? And I agree. So there's opportunities. However, that doesn't mean that it's better. I am not arguing the concept of resources. I'm arguing the concept of better. You know what I mean? The education is, if you apply for it, and the thing, yes, this is what happens when you apply for a job, and someone did their undergrad in the UK, they're probably gonna get, like, they're probably gonna get hired quickly, because they think, oh no, the education must be better. But how do we know that it's better? You've never been there, right? You didn't go to the classroom, you didn't, you know what I mean? And I think also with, fine, and this is not high school, because high school is a different breed, especially in South Africa. High schools in South Africa are different from high schools in the England, probably, right? I don't know, because I do know that also high schools that are IEB, Tina, who went to township schools, probably had a different education to people who went to like private schools. I agree. But when you get to university, the even though we are not going to be you know advantage the same, right? I'm not gonna have the same advantage as someone who went to, I don't know, Kuro or Hyde Park. I don't know. Yeah, I know what I mean. But that only applies first, second, and third year. Fine, you catch up, right? We're all in the same. And then we do our post grad. It doesn't mean that universities in the West are good. And we also don't know how they are ranked, right? So now you will see, okay, no, this is number one. Like Harvard is number one. How is it ranked? Do you know how it's ranked? I don't know how it's ranked, right? But you hear, oh no, you need to go to Harvard because Harvard is better. It's a big deal. It's an Ivy League. You get a job. Even the same applies in South Africa, right? We have our own Ivy League in South Africa. People will tell you if you went to BITS, UCT, or UP or Stellies, you're gonna get a job because it's better. Is it though? How are they ranking this? Should it even matter? Are those things important when you're looking for a job? Because okay, if you think about what are you getting from an education? Is it to like know how to solve a math equation, or is it to if the goal is to work, then what you should be getting is learning how to study, learning how to learn something quickly. All universities can teach you that, even if you study art, even if you study I don't know, law, even if you study mathematics, the goal is the same. You don't know something, you figure out how to know it, and then you know it, and then they test you how to know it. So whether or not you went to a nice building doesn't matter really. Parents died without even like getting inside a plane and exploring these places, right? And many won't, and you know what I mean. But then why is that the case? Okay, fine, it's expensive, and two, also because then there's the conversation that was had, right? I was watching this podcast with Trevor Noah and this other prime minister from Barbados, and she was saying that because the West are not having children, African countries, we are having so many kids. Like we still are. Southern African countries, we are pumping children. The West doesn't have children, but you need
people to work, right? You need a working population. So I'm saying there is a supply of labor, there is a demand for labor. Why aren't you shipping these people to?
And you see, what are you seeing in the US? In fact, they're deporting people. But the problem is you don't have labor. Why? It's because they don't want black people to come to these countries. They don't. I mean, if they did, then if they do, if they can tolerate you, then you have to do like you either have to be like, you have to have a skill that is so rare, like you're gonna have to be like the best of the best in your country, which isn't bad, because then what's gonna happen to South Africa? Because if you're taking someone with the greatest skills South Africa, even the brain bleed is crazy, right? So if you either have to have this crazy skill, or you can come and work like as a helper. But the middle, it's gonna be war, because the idea, a lot of people work in this middle job, right? So you have a few people who are working as like helpers. In the US, it's Mexican people. In South Africa, it's people from Zim, maybe. It's always like that. There's always a country next to you that you get helpers from, right? That's fine. They can accept that. And then you have the middle workers, the middle management people. If you bring in someone else to occupy these majority jobs, they're gonna go crazy, because they're gonna think, oh no, there are black people taking our jobs, and then it's a war. So it's either you have to be a cleaner, or you have to have like a crazy skill, like you have to know how to code with your eyes closed, whatever, to be accepted, to even get a visa. Because how I got a visa, like, give us the top 3 students of your institution.
So I don't think. Listen, I don't think that Mina like a degree that it's important that more send the CV out and they put it through AI. They want to see, oh no, you have like a undergrad. It's in the minimum requirement, but that's all that it is. It's a minimum requirement, which is crazy, right? Because you spend all this money, you get this degree, and it's just a minimum requirement. How many people are getting degrees every year? It's literally just a minimum requirement. Like, when a umuntu who doesn't have it, you might end up in the same place because you just met the minimum. That's it. And then what else do we look for? Now we look for experience. We look for skill. Can you code? Can you edit? Can you write? A skill that is invaluable? That's the second level. And then third level is experience. So yeah, degree is just like if value degree is deteriorating every year, in my opinion. I think the only thing that changes your salary is experience. I think your education just puts you in the door, but I think experience plays a bigger role, right? And going back to this idea with people who have degrees as matter, listen, I know if it has nothing to do with getting a degree. Think about what getting a degree means. It means that you went to a classroom, someone taught you something, you went home and you crammed that whatever that is, and you wrote an exam and you got and you passed. That's all that it is. But if you can, without any formal education, start from nowhere, like the example of my nail tech, she started from nowhere. She came from a country, she had no plan. She did things she didn't want to do. She grew from that. She learned how to do the nails on her own. Now she's making a lot of money. There are other people who cannot do that. You cannot say that the person who does that is dumb, though. You know what I'm saying? Like you cannot say that. And I don't want also people that like the same thing with the West thing. It's those things are just connotations, just ideas flowing around. That people who have higher education are smarter. People who have you've learned something. You are gonna get something from university. I agree. You will get a different way of thinking. It doesn't mean that you are smarter though. For example, look at people about Trevor Noah, for example, people about Mark Zuckerberg. I know they are far-fetched and I know it's terrible to make examples of those people, but they're the ones who are in the public eye. There are many other ones who are not in the public eye who are just as smart as me or the other person who got degrees. Just that they didn't have the opportunity. It's all, which is what I want to talk about as well, it's all about luck as well. Like luck plays a huge role in these things. Just because you are unlucky in some aspect doesn't mean that you're not smart. Everyone, a lot of people are. There are people who aren't, people who are. I don't know. I don't think so. But do you know what I mean? That's just because you don't have a thing on your wall doesn't mean. Artists, you know this, Pumi. There are artists who are great, who have the skill, but they don't have a degree on the wall. And the other ones who have degrees on the wall, I've seen them like in this fancy place, and I'm like, ma'am, you can't do nails to save your life. But because you have this degree, what does it mean? So tell me, Gegula what now? Who have a degree but cannot do like nails, but they are nail techs, they have them. Just because they wrote an exam, that's just it doesn't, you know what I mean? And I agree, maybe I'm in a position of like, oh no, you've already done it, but even in I can trust me, it's not that complicated. I truly believe, this is me. I worked in consulting, right? And then they say that, oh, in consulting you need to have the minimum requirements are you need to have an honors degree, you need to have 70% and above, at least you need to go to like these top 3 universities. But trust me, even someone who did art at whatever University of Limpopo could do that job and could do it very well, as long as they have that skill, the people skill and whatever. Everything else they're gonna teach you. They're gonna teach you how to use Excel. You're gonna learn. You can learn how to use Excel. You can learn how to use it. You can learn those things. Doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. Just sounds unbelievable, right? Sounds very like woo, but it really doesn't. And as soon as also you start believing that it doesn't, that's when you start moving. Because if you've already told yourself that it matters, then you won't move. And if you don't start moving, nothing will improve. You know what I'm saying? So if you say that you want to have if you want to make money, that's all our goals, try and survive. And you say, well, I don't have a degree and I don't think I have the skill, so I'm just gonna sit at home. Nothing is gonna happen for you. But if you say I'm gonna do what can I do now? The number one thing is to move. For example, I've never been comfortable with making videos and whatnot and being creative, and I've been open about it. But I say, well, if I sit at home and tell myself that I'm not good at it, then I will never improve. Nothing's gonna happen. What can I do tomorrow? And what I can do tomorrow is I can open my camera and sound dumb, and then post and people laugh at me, and then I can do it again tomorrow and do it again the next day, and then eventually I don't know where this is gonna go, whatever. So what can I do tomorrow? And tomorrow I can ask someone who knows the tools to do this for me. But if you tell yourself that no, I don't have the degree, so I'm just not gonna, you're gonna believe that. And if you say this thing, if you say something to yourself enough times, you will believe it. If you tell yourself enough times that, oh no, I can't do this, you'll start believing it.
But it sounds like it's coming from a point of privilege, because you already have it.
Yes.
That you tasted the fact that this doesn't really, it's like going
Yes.
to a rich kid's house,
Yes.
and then they are so used to having these cupcakes,
Yes.
and then this is nothing, you can just have that.
Yes. Or like rich people saying that money doesn't matter.
Exactly, that's how
Yes.
it sounds. Because that curiosity, if I held that degree, where would I be? What more opportunities would it open for me?
So you feel like if someone has a degree, then they are like, okay, what in your mind, like what does a degree afford you? Like when you have a degree, what does it mean in your world?
Well, that's why I don't have it.
Like
I would love
does
to.
it mean something?
When I look at others, for instance, Jengawe, it looks like, the companies that you work for, they wouldn't
Yes.
look at me ngisho kuthiwa ngi-intelligent kanjani
Yes.
without that no one can just go and knock on that door.
Yes.
There are places that you know with here I can't even set my toe there.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yes.
so I don't know, man.
Okay, fine. What is the goal then there? Like, is the goal to make money or is the goal to work for company X? Because if the goal is to work, that's a very narrow goal. If the goal is just to work for this one company, that's very narrow. Like, it has to be more broad than that. It has to be either money, it has to be a skill, it has to be I don't know, it has to be more than that. Because if it's money, then you and I are in conversation, we can talk about it. If it's this particular company, then yeah, you're gonna have to then. But even then, you get this degree, and then, because for example, if you think about the company that I worked in, right? They typically hire like 1% of their applicants. So if your goal, if say you from when you were in matric, you were like, I want to work for this particular company, and they hire 1%, and you do everything right, and you apply for it, and you still don't work there, what does that mean? Does it mean that what you did is like?
So also I'm thinking, now that you are mentioning that AI is introduced to the world, it's taking over everything.
Yes.
So most companies are retrenching already because, for instance, I have a business, but I can do my business filing through AI. I can tell AI, do this, balance my journal here, do this. That means accountants don't have jobs anymore. So in your field, what would you advise a young person to focus on? Because it's not all of us that can do like a skill that requires izandla.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. You know the thing is also, I think maybe for the next, I think also I've watched a lot of videos podcasts about AI and how AI is going to like destroy humanity. And who's this guy? I think his name is Simon, the founder of OpenAI. So the thing is though, at least for the next 10 to 15 years, it's not that we're not gonna have any accountants. It's just that instead of having 5 accountants in a company, we're gonna have 1 or 2. And then they're gonna be able to do the job of 5 accountants. This for the next 15 years, right? So it's a very good question, because you need to figure out a way to distinguish yourself, right? You need to figure out a way to use the AI when you're yourself, because that's also a skill, right? And there's many forms of it. Like, yes, ChatGPT is one of them, but there are many other ones that you can learn how to use, or you can use efficiently. So as a person, I would say, even people will always tell you coding, but now AI can code. So what can you do? You need to figure out a way, first and foremost, to, because people are still going to be hired, just not as much as they used to be hired, right? So how can you distinguish yourself?
Interesting.
And what the skill that we didn't really emphasize on is going to be required even more. I think, in my opinion, a human skill is going to be required even more, because AI, what the language does, AI is like, it learns like patterns, right? So it regurgitates a pattern that it is seen before, right? You then as a human has to put a human touch into that. Study engineering, you're gonna become an engineer. Study this, you're gonna become that, right? Mm-hmm. It's all an illusion. No one is doing the job that they studied for. Like, there are, like, maybe doctors, Doctors are YouTubers now. Doctors are entrepreneurs. People who studied engineering are software engineers. People who study computer science are consultants. This whole thing is an illusion, right? And why do I say also, when you go to work, more figure 17, no one is gonna ask you to remember what you did. Even in masters, no one's gonna ask you to remember what you did. In fact, they're gonna tell you exactly what they want you to do. They don't even want you to think about. Don't even overthink this. Your ideas, fuck your ideas. We don't care about your ideas. What you want you to do this. This whole thing, a degree, its degree is only used to like filter. That's all degrees for. We need people who at least understand how to think. People who at least understand if I want to do something, I need to learn this. If I want to do this, I want to learn. That's all that a degree is for. It doesn't matter what you're studying. Really, it really doesn't. Right? What matters is what Pumile is saying, which is skill. And let's talk about experience, right? You know, people complain a lot about oh no, oh no, bangfuna 5 years of work. Where am I going to get 5 years of work experience? Which is true. Companies don't really care that much what you study. They care about your experience, especially when you go out, like when you go at a high level, right? So this, yeah, you can learn a skill that is market. There are many ways to make money these days, which is great, right? The internet is a great way to make money, and even these jobs that are like not glamorous, they don't have to be what you do forever, but it's a great entry level, right? So if, say for example, you want to work in South Africa and you're like, you know what, instead of thinking, oh, you can apply at a bank and whatnot, you can just apply to McDonald's, right? For you to just get the permit, the work permit, and then work there for a short while, and then after a while, you even there, layer exposure layers, you might meet someone, you don't know, no one knows really, but it's better than you doing something that is far-fetched as opposed to something that is you can do now and grow from it. Does that make sense? So it's easier to just, as long as you just work a little bit and you have that experience, and then you can grow from it. So I don't think that Mina, like, a degree is that it's important that more send the CV out and they put it through AI. They want to see, oh no, you have like a undergrad. It's in the minimum requirement, but that's all that it is. It's a minimum requirement, which is crazy, right? Because you spend all this money, you get this degree, and it's just a minimum requirement. How many people are getting degrees every year? It's literally just a minimum requirement. Like, whether umuntu who doesn't have it, you might end up in the same place because you just met the minimum. That's it. And then what else we look for? Now we look for experience. We look for skill. Can you code? Can you edit? Can you write? A skill that is invaluable? That's the second level. And then third level is experience. So yeah, degree is just like if value degree is deteriorating every year, in my opinion. But we still do it. I just spend so much money doing my master that I don't know.
Yeah. So also I'm thinking, now that you are mentioning that AI is introduced to the world, it's taking over everything.
Yes.
So most companies are retrenching already because, for instance, I have a business, but I can do my business filing through AI. I can tell AI, do this, balance my journal here, do this, do this. That means accountants don't have jobs anymore. So in your field, what would you advise a young person to focus on? Because it's not all of us that can do like a skill that requires izandla.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. You know the thing is also, I think maybe for the next, I think also I've watched a lot of videos podcasts about AI and how AI is going to like destroy humanity. And who's this guy? I think his name is Simon, the founder of OpenAI. So the thing is though, at least for the next 10 to 15 years, it's not that we're not gonna have any accountants. It's just that instead of having 5 accountants in a company, we're gonna have 1 or 2. And then they're gonna be able to do the job of 5 accountants. This for the next 15 years, right? So it's a very good question because you need to figure out a way to distinguish yourself, right? You need to figure out a way to use the AI when you're yourself, because that's also a skill, right? And there's many forms of it. Like, yes, ChatGPT is one of them, but there are many other ones that you can learn how to use or you can use efficiently. So as a person, I would say, even people will always tell you coding, but now AI can code. So what can you do? You need to figure out a way, first and foremost, to, because people are still going to be hired, just not as much as they used to be hired, right? So how can you distinguish yourself?
Interesting.
And what the skill that we didn't really emphasize on is going to be required even more. I think, in my opinion, a human skill is going to be required even more, because AI, what the language does, AI is like, it learns like patterns, right? So it regurgitates a pattern that it is seen before, right? You then as a human have to put a human touch into that. So even though, yes, your job, like as an accountant or as a consultant or as an analyst, is going to be done by AI, then you need to figure out a way to present this to a client in a manner that is, acceptable. How do you do that? That's a different set of, it's a skill. This talking thing doesn't come naturally, does it? It really doesn't. It's uncomfortable, no one likes it. But it's a skill, it's going to be invaluable, because we go to interview, you have all the qualifications, and if someone who's like been learning how to speak, who's been learning how to communicate effectively, they're gonna surpass you in the interview because they've learned the skill, right? You don't, like, it doesn't really, there's gonna be a different set of skills that you're gonna need to have in addition to the AI. So I don't know what those skills are exactly. I don't think even the people who are creating this AIs know what the skill is going to be. And it's true, companies are going to continue retrenching people because they don't need as much. And even I can do the task that used to take me forever to do. Like, it's gonna happen. How we solve it, we don't. It's depressing. Yes, everyone doesn't like, people don't like talking about AI, but it is what it is.
Thank you for watching. If you like the video, please click like and subscribe and engage. Leave a comment, whatever you feel, good, bad, ugly, hate speech, I don't care. Just say what is on your mind. Let's engage with the topic. Thank you so much.